what happens when a country's national broadcaster stops serving the people and starts silencing them? So that's what we're going to talk about today in our 5th episode about the media darkness in Serbia. And we have our guest with us today that's going to talk about this. And it's Milica. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. So I'm a student of psychology in Nijmegen in the Netherlands, but I am originally from Serbia, and I grew up there and I lived there until about 5 years ago. I moved almost 5 years ago. And I would say similar to many of the people in the Netherlands or in the diaspora even, I've been, I would say, quite active ever since the protest started and the blockade started last December. So I've been active here in the protests that we've organized to show our support and voice our support for the students. And I've also been organizing an event with like a student union movement at my university to spread the information and spread the word about what is actually happening in Serbia, what is happening to the Serbian students, what are they doing, and why that's relevant for everyone, I would say.
Yeah, so our second guest ever is also Dutch diaspora, so
yes,
Dutch Serbians are really, really supporting this.
Yes, there's maybe the same like 350 of us, but we're all very active, you know.
Very
and
active.
I have to say, what's really, I don't know if Lena mentioned this in the previous episode, but we are also very active in collecting the money and donations for students. So we're very proud of that because we really collected, I think up until now, like 20,000 euros or something has been collected by the Dutch diaspora for the students in Serbia. So yeah.
That's wonderful. Yes. Thank you for doing that to for our nation, and thank you for being our guest today and talking about all of this. So we're going to talk about the media darkness and about the RTS blockades. So maybe let's start with what is RTS, just in a short sentence, and then Laura, you can tell us so what it is and what is happening right now in Belgrade.
So RTS, or in Serbian RTS, is the public broadcast channel. So it is the channel that every person who lives in Serbia has to pay for. And it is the national channel that is obliged to present the facts. So if an earthquake is happening, they should speak about it. If a protest is happening, they should speak about it. They have to just say the situation as it is. So really, really something basic. So recently, there was a huge student effort with biking to Strasbourg. And students were biking across 4 countries for, I think, around 13 days for 1,300 kilometers. And it was a huge event that was broadcasted in Hungary, in Germany, in France, in many other European countries, pretty sure Netherlands as well. But it was not broadcasted in Serbia. So it is an event that everyone saw, basically, except the people who watched the main public broadcasting service in Serbia. So that is really unheard of, that the whole world knows what's happening except the people who are grandparents and cousins of the kids that are doing this epic feat. So when that was not broadcasted, people were, I think, really enraged. They have been enraged at this public service for many years because they're just simply choosing sides. Yeah, decades even. They're choosing sides. They're choosing what stories they cover, what stories they completely ignore, and what they say about different people. So not facts, opinions, not facts. And again, they're there for the facts. So when that happened, when they did not broadcast what seemed to us as the event of the century, maybe, people were really enraged. And on Monday, so exactly a week ago at 10 p.m., the students blocked the public, like the RTS, the RTS, whatever. So they blocked it at 2 locations. They blocked it in the center of town where their studio is, where they do one part of the production. And they blocked the huge other studio, which is a bit far away from town. It's like near a park/forest in the capital still. So they blocked it at 10 p.m., saying that nobody is allowed to come in. So the guests aren't allowed to come in. The workers that are there, they can stay and do their job, but they cannot exit and then return to work if they're not going to do their job. So that is not an option. You're not presenting the facts. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. So why should we let you get back into a place of work where you're not going to do your job? And they said very clearly what can end the blockade. So the thing that can end the blockade is the re-election of members of, I'm sure Milica is going to explain this a lot better, members of a regulatory body that decide how electronic media runs. So what you can do, what you absolutely cannot do, and what you have to do. So they said we're blocking these two studios until they start doing the job that we all pay them for. So that was Monday, 10 o'clock. And that day, I think I had like a workout or something. And it's not the first time that RTS has been blocked. They were blocked many times, like as a cautionary block, like, listen, we know that you're a huge source of this problem. So we're going to be here and we're going to scream and we're going to yell and we're going to be so loud that you will hear us through the show, because it's only like they're in studios, but those studios are in a building that is being surrounded by people shouting. So that happened a few times, but now the students were really determined. You did not cover the story of the century. We're not leaving until the situation drastically changes. They call for support. I come there Monday night thinking, oh, this is like, okay, I'm going to be here, but I hope things are going to get better. They did not get better. And Tuesday, again, people arrive there. So there's people 24 hours a day. And there's like this really, I mean, people here are so witty, and we're finally getting a chance to see that. So people are there 24 hours a day, and then they made like shifts. So you have like a 4-hour shift, a 2-hour shift. Students do mostly 8-hour shifts, and those who can. And then like if you're in a local committee, the committee decides, okay, we're like the committee of this part of town is going to do 2 till 4 a.m. The committee of that part of town is going to do 4 till 6. You can always stay longer, but we have to keep this sustainable. So we have like, I think it's 12 shifts. So the first one is like hiking shift, 5 to 7, and then dog walking shift, 7 till 9, cappuccino shift, kids shift, like walk in the evening, party shift, after party shift. So people are being really witty about this because
That's
you have
amazing.
to. Yeah,
like they literally like plan their lives with it. Like it's not like you walk your dog anyway. So just come and walk it here. Like it's beautiful. They brought the names for it. Yeah.
It is, and it's like you have the names for this because you have to keep it sustainable and you have to keep it like appealing. And students organize DJ events, of course, for Easter, which was this weekend. It was silent, but we're going to talk about that more. And so everyone really quickly understood that this is going to be something long term. Luckily, time is on our side. It's 27 degrees in Belgrade. Summer basically started. So you can sit outside for more hours during the day. And that's what the situation has been looking like. So there's people there 24 hours exactly. So tonight, when we're recording this, so it's Monday at 10 p.m. It's going to be 7 days constantly of the blockade. So what it looks like, we're going to talk about this more, but I'm just going to say what it looks like from here. So if you can like drop by after work, you can drop by, as I said, before work, depends on who lives where. You can come in the middle of the night. But whenever you do go there, there's usually a lot of people and the energy is really high. So you have like people who are like students organize DJ sessions, and they're like parties. Some people are reading, some people are chatting, some people are catching up. And the main thing is to keep a large number of people there. Because previously we know that like a protest starts at 8 p.m. around 1 a.m. people start to leave, and around 2 a.m. the police comes and like threatens everyone to leave quickly. So now people are coming all the time to prevent that. And it's really, I think that people here have been looking for a reason to party for decades, and to like not escapism party, like not we're ignoring what's happening, let's party, but like hopeful party. And you see people like dancing at Košutnjak at like 2 a.m. And like 60-year-olds dancing with like next to 13-year-olds and kids, and like now this is pretty safe. So there's like dogs and kids during the day. It's not like the sound cannon thing. So yeah, it's really crazy. And then like I think a few times like I wake up at 3, and then I go there, and it's just like bizarre to see like 3 a.m. you're walking in your hometown, and like there's people and there's like music, and it's really crazy. But it is exhausting, but it is something that you have to do. And just quickly before we move to the larger context of this, the public broadcaster has been responding in a ridiculous way. Like they're now not able to film the news in their studio because it is being blocked. So they took refuge in like party-owned media that we talked about extensively. And they're taking cover there. And, you know, like it's like a studio that we can recognize from the party-owned media, but then they put like their flag or like their logo, and they're like, it's chill, like it's fine. And you see
it's crazy that is
like,
that is the public broadcaster. Like it's crazy. It's not we're not talking about like, I don't know, a non-important television broadcaster. We're talking about BBC, CNN, like something something very important. Like that's the most important broadcaster for this country. It's not something
can see it.
Everyone can see it. And then like these things, the ways that they're finding how to like still broadcast the things it's just like so childish, and as if they didn't have a huge company, and they're still like continuing to do things their way.
And it's like you can see that the host has been in the same outfit for like 5 days straight, and then there are like some random journalists that you've never seen before who are like, you know, so if the RTS is located in like a street here, they're covering the protest from like here. They're not even 1 street away. They're like 5 streets away. They're like, as you can see, there's not that many people behind us. You can see that they're like in the crowd, and people are walking. They're like, are you like, what's wrong with you? They have their answer, like response to this is number 1, like in hiding, like they're hiding, and you see every day the news is like, it was 20 minutes, and then it was 15 minutes, and then it was like 2 minutes yesterday, because they don't have any guests. They don't have any reporters. Like they're not covering anything. They can't work. And that's like the kind of funny side of their response. But the seriously concerning side of their response is that they compared students with the Nazi regime and them as like victims who are being trapped, and they're like being blocked and interrogated by the students that are like really looking similar to the Nazi like investigative service of Nazi Germany. So it's a crazy story, but that's just like my take from Belgrade. And now I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more about this.
Yeah, and I think it's also, like, it was crazy. I think I saw it yesterday or the day before that RTS, or maybe it wasn't even RTS, maybe it was some other, I think it was maybe Politica, which is also another big newspaper media agency here in Serbia, or in Serbia, not here, because I'm not there right now, but was reporting about how the students are not letting food come into the building of RTS and how they're starving the workers. And you're just reading that, and you're like, if I had no access to any other form of if I, for example, didn't have the internet or like social media, right? If I was an older person, if I grew up in this culture of thinking that whatever I see on the street is indeed true, the newspapers I buy are really truthful and honest, I would read this and I would think our students are like Nazi Germany. They're starving these people, but it's not true, and that's what makes it so. What makes our rage so much more stronger, I think. Yes. But it also really, I think, shows the power, the good side of the internet. Because we're not blind, especially many of us, right? The students in Serbia and beyond, we're like known as the digital natives, right? Because we grew up with the internet. We know how to use it very well. We know its advantages and disadvantages. And you can spread information so easily, and you can find out the truth so easily, especially if you know how to use the internet, that you're just, you're sitting there and thinking, I mean, who do you think I am? Do you think I'm going to trust this? But there really are people who would trust it. And if I may, I don't want to like bore you too much with the info about REM, which is the regulatory body for electronic media. Their job obviously is, because of the fact that not everyone in any country, and also in Serbia, has equal levels of media literacy in the first place, but also media literacy, education, money at the end of the day, and the different socioeconomic statuses. There exist like these types of bodies exist to regulate the media and to make sure that, okay, of course, media is never going to be completely unbiased. That's just a fact. Whenever you report on something, there will be an amount of bias in it. But there has to be like a distinction. There has to be a limit as to how much you can choose sides, right? So REM exists in Serbia to basically regulate what is being reported on, how is it being reported on, and if all of the media houses and broadcasting companies who are allowed to broadcast in Serbia, are they reporting to a similar standard, more or less. And so the funny thing about REM is, I wanted to go to see how they define it, and of course there's all of these like very official legal words, but the very important thing in describing what is REM, they say we are protecting the public interest in electronic media and protecting users of electronic media services in accordance with like the law on electronic media in Serbia, right, in accordance with our laws. And another very important thing is, again, from their own website, so I'm quoting, the regulator is functionally and financially independent of government bodies and organizations, media service providers and operators. So this is should be, end quote, this is a fully independent regulatory body. The funny thing about it is the fact that the council of REM, so like the main people who would be on the council who are like, doing most of the job, or do they have the final say in how REM works, hasn't existed in 4 months. I believe in December was the month when we were supposed, or maybe end of November, I forgot to look up the exact date. They were supposed to have elections for the council. That hadn't happened. And still, up until this day, for 4 and more months, REM hasn't had a council. So that means that this body doesn't exist anymore, de facto. I mean, it does exist, but it's not doing its work because it doesn't have a council.
That's crazy. But why were there elections? Like, do they have like elections, like presidential elections, like after some time, or that something happened and then they had to re-elect?
Yes, they are obliged to hold elections and change the council. I don't quite remember like how it works, but they cannot function without it, and they have to have it. So it does work in a way like presidential elections, quote unquote, or parliamentary elections, where you have to have the council to choose the council every few years. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years. I can look it up, but I'm not 100% sure. But either way, it's not like something had happened now.
And so it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen, and the council doesn't exist right now.
And the council doesn't exist. And I think that really shows you the extent to which media is literally just not taken seriously at all anymore. Yeah. The ethics of media, the ethics of proper journalism, the ethics of proper reporting have been long gone in Serbia. And I think this is just like the final blow, or like this really just shows you the extent of it. Because no one, even like in the ruling party, no one in any of the media, national media with like a national frequency, no one has even said anything like, hey, hello, like REM, like the body which regulates us, is not working. Or any of the, for example, lawyers who are related to media and laws of electronic media also haven't said anything. So the first time that I heard of it, for example, was because of the student blockades, when they were like, REM hasn't had a council in 4 months, so we're gonna block RTS. And that's when I was like, what the hell? Like, it's literally it was such a small thing that people, I mean, in the end, it looks like such a small thing that no one even knew until the students mentioned it, which I think really shows you like the extent of how unseriously it is taken in Serbia, like regulations on media.
We talked about, what triggered these blockades, but let's talk about what is the reason behind it, like a deeper reason. And this is not something, the media darkness is not something that we've been experiencing for the past 12 years since the ruling party has been the ruling party. It's something that we have been experienced way back. So why I mentioned like the decades. RTS has been known as not the people's friend, but not also the enemy, but it's like it's not been doing its job. Propaganda. It's not been doing its job for a really long time. And probably from the 90s. So what happened in the 90s? How do we see the propaganda then?
Yeah, it's so depressing, I think, every single time. I mean, first and foremost, I am really young, same as you two, right? Like, I was born in 2003. I was born after the 90s, after the wars, after Milosevic was overthrown, even after Djindjic was, the prime minister at the time, was killed. So I grew up, you would imagine that, given the fact that I grew up after all the bad stuff had happened, right? That would be like in the past. But the truth is, in Serbia and also countries in the Balkans and other ex-U countries, but especially I think prominently in Serbia, the events of the 90s follow us through to this day, very strongly.
It's the same, like everything that you hear, like from your parents or something like that. Like it's the same.
It's repeating constantly. Yeah. It's not like it has changed, except we don't have a war right now or sanctions. But everything else stayed the same, which is really depressing. But the reason why RTS has been known as literally the government's mouthpiece for decades, like you said, is that even back in the... So RTS actually got created, I'm gonna maybe specify this, it stands for Radio Television of Serbia. And it got created by the merging RTB, so Radio Television of Belgrade, Novi Sad, the second largest city in Serbia, and Pristina, the city in Kosovo and Metohija, which has its disputed whether is it part of Serbia and Kosovo, of course, depending on which side you're on. And so RTS got formed basically in 1991, 1992 as a merger of these three television and radio companies, which really consolidated it as like a very much Serbian national level broadcaster. Because, of course, that was the time when the wars in Yugoslavia had started, the breakup of Yugoslavia had started, so Slovenia was getting independent, Croatia had just started the war of getting independence. And in this very extremely polarized moment, you had a lot of like rising tendencies. I mean, I know Ariana and Laura know this, but maybe not everyone is very familiar with it. Extremely rising nationalistic tendencies in the countries of Yugoslavia. So what had the people who had once been all like Yugoslavs and brothers and were all the same, right, and everything, now we're going back to looking, okay, so you are Catholic Croatian, you are like Slovenian, and you are Orthodox Serbian, and you are Muslim Bosniak, etc., etc. And in this time you have this rise of this like one new media company, broadcasting company, which is really has its highlight on like Serbia. Even though RTS, like you would say, I mean, it lies in its RTB, at least, or Radio Belgrade, is one of the oldest radio stations in Europe, the oldest one in Yugoslavia, one of the oldest ones in the Balkans, either way, and it kind of got merged into RTS. But the problem with RTS is that already in around the end of going from 80s to the 1990s, it had been more or less consolidated by Milosevic, so the then president of Serbia and later the president of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. It had been in a way consolidated as his media company in a way, and as very a pro-Serbian, very nationalistic media company. That wasn't very obvious then, but it became very obvious the moment that the wars had started and the breakup of Yugoslavia had started. And why it served such a great purpose is because of the fact that, first of all, I mean, RTS has national frequency, right? So everyone has access to it. When you turn on the TV, if you have cable TV, that is what you see. And RTS is also, because it is a public broadcasting company, it is paid for by the taxpayers' money. So everyone who pays taxes in Serbia, everyone who lives in Serbia, is paying taxes to RTS. RTS exists because of the people who are paying for it. Other national companies, companies with national frequencies, even if they are also reporting extremely inaccurately, like Pink, which I think you mentioned already, or Informer, or like the extremely trashy media companies like those, even though they are horrible and they have national frequency, they are not paid for by the people. Whereas RTS is literally paid, it's part of the, right, it's paid for by the taxpayers' money. And so that aside, I think how, when they really showed their true face, RTS is really known as showing its true face because of the fact that during the wars of the 90s and extremely crucial moments like the siege of Dubrovnik and the siege of Sarajevo also, they were not only were they not reporting on it, they were saying that people, for example, in Dubrovnik are not actually under a siege, and that they are not, that there are no fires, and that the smoke, for example, coming from the ammunition was actually coming from people setting their cars on fire. I don't know if you know that. I remember like my mom telling me that story, that's how they would report on it. And similarly, when the siege of Sarajevo was happening, which is the largest siege of a capital city or any largest city in Europe since the Second World War, which lasted for 3 years, it has taken many lives. I mean, it is one of the most brutal, I think, events in Yugoslavia's history. At the time, as the siege was happening, the broadcasting of RTS, so the editorial part of RTS, was basically saying that the siege, they were straight up lying to people. For example, what they did, that's also a very common, very well-known example of the RTS propaganda, not only in Serbia, I think also people abroad who know a little bit more about Yugoslavia and about Serbia do know these examples. RTS would, for example, show pictures of Sarajevo from before the siege, for example, from 1991, 1990, 1989, whatever, and say, look, there is no siege. Like, they are lying to you. The other media is lying to you. As the people are getting shot at by snipers, you know? Which is just wild. I mean,
how far
it can go,
how far they went.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I mean, even then, of course, okay, you didn't have the internet and everything, but still, people are not blind. At least not all people are blind, right? Some people have access to private media companies. Some people have access to independent media. But around that time, people had started having access to the internet. Not many, but still some. So you are able to know, or you know someone, obviously, who lives in Sarajevo, or who escaped Sarajevo because of the siege. And people are saying, what do you mean it's not happening? I was there, or I saw it, or I see it, you know? I know people who are there, who are experiencing it. I mean, obviously, that is not something you can hide.
What is it doing to them? Like, what is it doing to them psychologically to be like, I know, like, someone who's been shot at, or who's been there, like literally running away from the police or from the happenings, and then I come home after running my whole, like after leaving the siege literally, and I come home and then someone tells me, no, you did not. You know, like what happens then? Like for decades we've been just brainwashed into knowing that, and then some people would even say like, oh yeah, then you know what maybe I was imagining it. It's crazy.
I mean,
the extent.
I think the large problem which arises in this, which arose at that time, is the fact that you had this very big us versus them narrative. So, and Serbia is very well known for the propaganda that was used during the 90s, but also Croatia had a similar situation. Even Bosnia had a similar situation. In the sense that once the independence wars started and the federal republics wanted to become independent countries, or sovereign states or whatever, you had one of the main ways to motivate people to actually participate in these wars, and participate in these movements, especially on Serbia's side, was to tell them, look, it is us versus them. They are, you know, they would call people in for example, in Dubrovnik, they are, I don't know, Ustaše, which are the how do I explain? These were the people who were helping the Nazi regime in Croatia and in the Balkans in the 1940s. So, for example, you would call these are the Ustaše. These are they slaughter babies. They do this. They do that. You know, whereas we are, you know, rightful and we are whatever. We are protecting our country, etc., etc. So I think it is very easy to, and I see, Laura, that you raised your hand, so I will just finish it very shortly. I will just wrap it up very quickly. It is very easy to manipulate people, especially when you take into consideration, again, the fact that many of the older generations in Yugoslavia really grew up in this culture where you are taught that the media isn't lying to you. Why would they lie to you? You know, they have
TV,
your best interest at side. Yeah. It's on TV, it's the truth. It's in the news, it's the truth. And we are all equal. We are all the same. I mean, of course, Yugoslavia was a socialist country. And so, you know, you had these ideas that we are all the same. We are all equal and everyone is getting the same treatment and everyone is getting the truth. Why wouldn't they? So I think a lot of people just really weren't aware of the levels of propaganda that they were going through through RTS. But to be fair, the people who actually had lived through Sarajevo, for example, the siege of Sarajevo, or through the wars, knew what was happening. I don't think it was I don't think it was an idea that, you know, that they were, but I do think it hurts you psychologically in the sense that, or just even emotionally, because maybe you're talking to someone and you realize they have a completely different view on this than you. They maybe even see you as the enemy. Maybe you see them as the enemy. That is the problem, and that is the power of the media. If you create this narrative, it's very, very difficult to unlearn it. And then it is, of course, very painful when you are met with someone who sees the world and who literally has a different reality than you. And I think many of the people in Serbia literally had a different reality than the rest. Laura, what did you want to say?
No, you said it so well, and I just, like, again, something that I just really wanted to, everything that you're saying is so true, and we saw something here that was like the most cathartic part of the blockade. So as Milica mentioned, like the fear mongering, the, like, for at least a decade, like a constant, they hate us, we hate them. They hate us, we hate them twice. They kill us, we will annihilate them. Like, all of that was in people for decades. And I was born in 97, so, like, I was there, but I wasn't really there, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it was so Friday and Sunday, so these days are like Orthodox holidays. And because many people, students as well, wanted to go home and just, you know, celebrate just for 2 days, students and people from Novi Pazar, the, I think, only town in Serbia where there is like a large Muslim community, or maybe even they're a majority, they came and they said, you go, celebrate your holidays, we're going to take over.
Goosebumps.
And that was... yeah, me too.
Yes, I get chills every time I think about it. Yeah.
And like that is incredible, because
solidarity again. Solidarity
exactly
of the people.
Exactly, because it was like hate this neighbor and this neighbor. We have a lot of neighboring countries, so there's like a lot of people that were taught to hate. Also hate them if they're another religion. Also hate them if they're richer than you. Also hate. And then and we're just seeing that as that hate dissolves, like solidarity literally comes from the borders as well. And then I think when they came, so students did this, I think it was like maybe unconsciously the most tactically well done move, that one of the largest protests was in Novi Pazar. Exactly the town where people feel that hate on a daily level, I'm sure. And then people from Novi Pazar come over, they say, we're taking like your shift, go eat your Easter eggs, like go to church, do whatever you wish. It's fine, we got this. And then veterans from the 90s, they came in front of RTS and they spoke. I wasn't there. It was like one of my nights off. But I saw it in the morning. Like they spoke at, I think, a bit past midnight. there's like this group of veterans from the 90s that has been watching over students and even teaching them some like basics of self-defense and like seeing who is maybe a threat. And then they said, like, kids, we were your age when we fell from the propaganda that was coming from this building right here. We fell for it, and we were so full of hate that we went to war and we did terrible things, and terrible things were done to us. It all came from this building that you're so
Exactly.
like, you're doing it so well that you're blocking it. And it was like, I think it was like one of the emotional peaks of this whole thing, like this 6 month almost thing, that they said, you know, because it's like the touchiest subject, like the 90s are like touchiest subject, and people who were there, not the politicians, people who were there and from Novi Pazar and from all over Serbia came and they said everything that happened was pure propaganda, and these people made it. And we can see like the speaker that I mentioned has been doing her job in like the same outfit. She spoke 30 years ago, same sentences, same hate. Yeah. So it's just insane how everything that you mentioned is like happening day by day and is being felt day by day. Just wanted to add that.
100%. I think that is, to me at least, as a Serbian person, it is one of the most moving things. I think one of the most beautiful things that has come from these protests is the events, is the protest starting in Novi Pazar, is the students go from the rest of Serbia going to Novi Pazar and vice versa, because I think it is really one of the, Sandžak is one of the region where Novi Pazar is, which has a Muslim majority, is one of the, they're almost like ostracized from Serbian society. I feel like they're straight up forgotten. Because you are, exactly like you said, you're so taught to see these people as your enemies, to see, for example, the Muslims in Bosnia as your enemies, or the Muslims in Kosovo and Metohija as your enemies, that you you forget these people also want to live in this country. These people are your neighbors, they're your co-workers, they're your peers in school, and they're just the same as you. And it is really heartbreaking that I even have to say this, that these people are the same as you. Like, they're people.
And they're going through the same things. They're also being lied to. They're also block their universities. They also like don't have a lot of things. So it's like everyone is going through the same thing.
Yes, they're also risking their lives every day on the street. I mean, they are risking their lives when they take the bus, for example, and they take the roads, or they take the train, because you never know what is going to happen. When is the next canopy going to fall? Everyone who lives in Serbia, but I mean also in neighboring countries, but Serbia, because we're all from Serbia, we know that example at least very well, is living that danger in a way every single day. Am I going to find a job after this university because I don't have anyone who is in the party, or because I don't have a connection, or I don't know the person who knows the person who knows the person who's going to find me a job? Where we all have that same reality. So I think it is just extremely moving, really.
Yeah. Also in the reality of, like all the young people, I think everyone just thinks about leaving. Like it's always like something that you think about leaving the country. And it's also something that is like people have been saying in these protests, like, I don't want to think that. I want to be young and I don't want to think about leaving my country. So it's,
And just like one thing that these people because the thing is that hate makes you weak. Like it makes you weak, paranoid, and tired, because you're like wasting 60% of your energy on defense. And that's what has been happening like for, as you mentioned, Ariana, like decades. People are weakened. Like when you start like being a victim of that, like propaganda weakening you in your 20s, now those people are in their 60s, they're like worn down, and I'm shocked that people are still like pushing through life as they do. But the thing is that when you see that the people who have been thriving on propagating hate and fear, now they don't have a response to what's happening, because their response was like in the like state-run media and the state-run like newspapers, the revolution is actually from Romania. No, and then like people, because like we're bordering countries, like Romanians who live in Serbia, they come to the protests. They're like, Romanians are with the students. Debunked.
Same with Croatia.
Exactly.
The foreign mercenaries from Croatia.
Yeah. And it's like the thing that Croatia, I think, is like the propaganda was so geared towards it, and there were like many bad events that were specifically related to Croatia, that like it's the most dense, and it's like the only part where it's barely holding on, to the extent that my best friend, who's Croatian, she is afraid that she's gonna get deported if she joins the protest. Like, she supports them, but she's not gonna join them because people are literally getting deported. Because those people who have been fed by hate for 30 years, they'd love to see Croatians deported. And you know, like they're gonna be happy about that. So that is still happening, but on so many other points, solidarity is coming in. You know, like people from Romania, Bulgaria, like Montenegro, people from Kosovo, like came here. They're like, no, like we're here with you. And then, you know, like, and then when it's not working with the neighboring countries, then go to minorities, go to religion minorities. The no-pass that happens, like, that's not working. You know, what's your next move? And the students always say, like, what's your next move? We know what it is. Like, we're 3 moves ahead. Like, we very well know how this is working. And then, you know, like other national minorities, like the tabloids are slandering everyone that has some difference that you can recognize them from, like ethnicity. And then that ethnicity is like, no, not us. Like, you know, we're just going to stop you here. So it's really like crazy to see how all of their answers that would be but like hate fueled are just like, you know, you don't have the material to say that. So yeah, it's going, like, it's exhausting, but people can see the effect, and I think that's why like we have energy to do this still.
Yeah. It's like the response from the regime media, and in that I would include like even the national frequency channels such as Pink. I don't know if Informer TV is national frequency, I'm not sure, but like Informer and like those newspaper companies, and like, Happy, yeah, like and they're all in English. That's also weird now when we think Happy and Pink. Like, why is that? But they are, I would say, based on hate. So there is also this the main, how would you say, the urednik, like the editor, the main editor of Informer, which was a newspaper but now also became a TV, Miloš Vučićević.
Dragan. This is the prime minister.
Dragan Vučićević, the prime minister. Yeah, they all have so many. Dragan Vučićević. How can a human explain this human? How can I explain him? He is the editor of a newspaper, but he is very opinionated, and everything that he says as a journalist, right? Like, he's very opinionated, and he's very, very against everything, and very aggressive, and very angry at everyone. You know, when there were this sound cannon thing happened, I mean, assuming that it was a sound cannon on 15th of March, and then they were like making fun of people who were reporting being sick and on their like morning program. You know, so it was like you constantly feel and see this hate, and you just implement that into people, because on every TV that you turn on, you most probably have his channel, so like you can hear that, and you can hear that only people that are right is him, and his people there, and the president. He's even rude to his own co-workers. Like, there are some videos of like him yelling at like someone because they didn't do a job as he told them to do, and then he would talk in such a rude language. Like, I wouldn't talk like that to anyone, anything. Like, I wouldn't talk to at a thing like that. Like, he's just so rude, and I don't know how those people still stand there and work for him, but I know like it's hard to find a job. But it's just you feel this, you turn on the news and you feel this, and that's their response. And then like also those people say that students are Nazis, and like they really are trying to shape the thoughts and the heads and everything of the nation, which is like, are they succeeding now? Like, you see, like, a lot of people are against it. Yes, a lot of people are protesting. But is there still, I mean, there is still, like, a bunch of people that still thinks that. Still, like, it's still, like, you turn on the TV and you say, yes, that's true. Students have started this action, like, organization. I think it's called, like, Student in Every Village. Something like that. Mm-hmm. Which I think is beautiful and something that could break this. And it's students are organizing like small groups of students, and they like bring a table and they go to a village in Serbia, and they sit with the table there, make like a sign saying talk to Serbian students, or like talk to the student in Blockades or something like that. And then people can approach them and just have a casual conversation. So the point of this is for people to feel, yes, as casual. Like I've seen people like, you know, smoking cigarettes and like drinking coffee and then talking with the students, not like as casual. And then just like learning about what's happening, and students taking all the time that they can to explain, you know, those things. So I think like that's beautiful, and that's the only way how you can get to those people that only have RTS, being happy and stuff like that. Like, that's the only way you can get to them, and to say, open your eyes. That isn't something normal. That isn't who we are. Open your eyes. So maybe it's advancing. Something's gonna happen there. Something's gonna happen on that plan.
What I think is really, really crucial, and you're so right. Like, it's such a good question. How could you believe something else if you only see the lies, straight up lies of Informer, of Pink, of Happy TV, even B92 or B92, I guess. B92, which was known as a really independent media before, many years before.
Totally not.
Not anymore, sadly, no. And I think what really, I know, I'm pretty sure you've talked about this, obviously, like the student marches, but I think one of the key events that they've brought is they really broke this shield and this veil of media darkness that Serbia has. Because I will always remember this beautiful video of this grandpa in a village. I forgot where it was filmed. It was on one of the marches where the students were going from, I think maybe they were going to Kragujevac. I honestly don't remember what protest it was, but it was some like a few months ago. The touching thing was this reporter, journalist, I think from N1 or maybe Nova S, so one of the independent media, not regime controlled media houses in Serbia. She goes to this grandpa, this old man in a village where they are welcoming the students who are walking from Belgrade to Niš maybe, or somewhere. I honestly don't remember where. Don't even remember the place. Doesn't even matter. And she goes to him and she asks him, you know, what are you doing here? And he says, I'm here to support the students. They are our liberators. You know, that's also something you hear very often from older people who live in Serbia. When they meet the people, they're saying they are liberators because they're literally liberating us from this regime and the system, and the also the lies of the media, among other things. And she's talking to him a little bit, and she asks him, oh, so what kind of, where do you get your news from? And he says, Pink. And she says, Pink, which is a very, very pro-government broadcasting house. She says, Pink, so why are you here? How come you are here? And he goes, well, because I know they're lying. And I think that tells you everything you need to know, because you cannot ignore a march of 80 young people coming with flags of Serbia, with these positive boards, with these witty, funny, boards and voices and chants, which are full of, they're fighting for freedom, for democracy, for a lack of corruption, for a better country. They want to stay in this country. They want to make it better. And they're walking and they're going from one end of Serbia to another.
One end of Europe.
And you hear that, exactly. And you cannot ignore that. Even if you are fully like entrenched in RTS and in Pink and even all of the even worse media companies we have, you cannot ignore it because it's happening right under your nose. If you ignore it, that means you're choosing to ignore it. But I think that is what is really crucial here. What you said about, do the people know? What about Informer? Why do people who work for Informer, choose to stay there? And I think the crucial thing is the people who are choosing to stay, I think you need to treat everyone as a human being, of course. You need to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But we should know and keep in mind that those people who are choosing to stay there, they know what is happening. And if they really wanted to fight the good fight, quote unquote, they would step out. But I think one of the main reasons why they don't is the fact that you said, Vučićević, he's a journalist. Da, da, da. I mean, he's not a journalist. He is not a journalist. He's like a baby Gables, he's this man. I don't think he knows what journalism is, because one of the main principles of journalism is you report on the things you see, you report accurately, you report fairly, you report truthfully. They don't do any of that. I mean, any of the media houses and media companies, they simply don't. And it's not even me choosing sides. It's simply the fact that when you open it, the things you see are not relevant at all to the events happening in the country. Or broader, and it's a lot of fear-mongering, it's a lot of choosing sides, it's a lot of even cursing in many of these, for example, bulletins that they have, or the meetings that they have, the daily news, the morning news, offending people, calling out people. These are all things which you simply, as a journalist, is like internationally, it's kind of expected you don't do that. So these people are not journalists, first of all. I would at least say I would not call them journalists, because I think it's a little bit offensive to actual journalists.
Yeah.
Because even if you have journalists that you don't agree with, or you don't agree with the company that they work for, you don't like the way they present, they are still, most of the time, you would say, trying to do it as little bias as possible. That is the whole point of journalism. But I think the problem, especially with RTS, is you said in the beginning, RTS is like BBC. And I think it would be really shocking to say that, of course, for example, when BBC reports on things in Serbia, they're reporting from the view of the UK. So, yeah, that is their perspective. That is, to some extent, their bias. But that is, right, normal. Al Jazeera is going to report with a specific other perspective and specific other bias, etc., etc. Everyone does so. Like I said, again, it's not, you cannot fully escape it. But the problem with RTS, and what many people commented on, especially in the early 2000s, what happened in Serbia is Milosevic was the president of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and in 2000s we had very big protests. Maybe some people know this, and Milosevic was overthrown because the people went on the streets because they said that the elections, the presidential elections, were fraud, and that were flawed, I guess, and that flawed, I guess, and that they made it to seem as if Milosevic won the majority of the votes, when in reality he didn't. And after many months of protesting, he ceded. He said, "Okay, I'm not." He basically gave up his presidential seat and his power. And the problem is in this turn of events in the year 2000 and the few years to come, you had this big, very difficult moment of having to choose, okay, who is at fault here and who isn't, right? How many of the people who work in RTS, for example, which of the people who work in RTS are to be blamed, you could say, for the propaganda that they were actively participating in? And who are the people that you say they're okay? Because some people are just going to say, well, I was just following orders, right? That's what the soldiers in Nazi Germany said, right? A news reporter might say, oh, well, I was just reading, from a piece of paper. I didn't write the actual report, so why am I to blame for the propaganda, right? Which, of course, all of that is very questionable. But the main thing is, in the early 2000s, as many of the directors, as many of the editors, as many of the people in the highest of positions were getting replaced by other people, you still had many people in the lower ranks, you could say, such as the journalists, such as people working in the studios, such as people working the rights, such as people writing the bulletins, etc., who weren't replaced because you simply don't have that many people. And so what many people have even said and commented on and criticized, especially journalists and people who work in the media, is that the journalists of RTS many of whom are still the same ones as from the 90s, simply don't know how to do their jobs. They don't know how to do journalism. They don't know how to do reporting. They know what propaganda is. They know how to do propaganda, but they simply don't. I'm really sad that I forgot to look up this quote. I forgot who it was who said it, that basically it was the person who became the director of RTS in the 2000s and very quickly actually gave up that job, I believe, and left the job because he was impressed at how bad the lack of ethics existed, I guess, amongst the workers. And what he was saying was, for example, you give these people, for example, news, they don't even know how to compare the sources that they get or how to weigh different sources or how to check whether they're verifiable. They're barely any different than just a simple person consuming media who has no media literacy whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I'm paraphrasing here, but that is in essence what he said. So I think that is the problem, in this turn of the century, you had maybe removed Milosevic and you had this new government and you had the hopes that things would change. But it is very, very difficult to change the fact that RTS as an institution is seeping in propaganda and has been for decades. So they don't have the manpower at the end of the day to do proper journalism, I would say. And even the people who do, for example, right now, and gosh, I keep forgetting to look up the names of the people who say these things. But for example, the one of the reporters from RTS, she said herself, I think it's very unfair that, for example, the people that they are forcing to report on currently about the student protests and about the blockade of RTS are, for example, people who just started working at RTS, people who don't have who have fixed contracts, so they don't have unlimited contracts, because those are people who have no experience and they are gonna get shouted at maybe by some civilians on the streets. They're gonna get offended by people and they don't even know where they are. Compared to these veterans of reporting, quote-unquote reporting, who should be the ones reporting on the situation? You go out on the street with these thousands of people mad at you for the lies you've been spreading. And you show that you're brave and that you can report and just stand by the way you've been reporting until now, but they don't do it. They don't come out. The old veterans, the old journalists of RTS, they don't come out on the streets mostly, and that is because they are afraid and they know that they cannot report accurately. So I think that is really showing you kind of the bigger picture of the reality of journalism in RTS and in Serbia, sadly.
Do you want to mention the protests that have happened before? So the protests in the 91 and 96 and 97.
Yeah. True. I think I also we were talking that we wanted to discuss this as well, because I think what is really interesting for the viewers to know, again, like I said, many people, there will always be people who will know the truth, right? And who will be able to figure out what the truth is. And so when the war started in 91, when the independence war started and the breakup of Yugoslavia started, you had many, many efforts in Serbia, which I'm very sad to say aren't well known in the wider, in the international community. You had many, many protests by many, many civilian communities against the war, against the current regime, against the electoral fraud, against so many things, against the lies that RTS was spreading. So in 1991, for example, you had anti-war protests, and you also had protests in front of RTS back then as well, because of they wanted the removal of the editor of RTS, of the director of RTS, because of the obvious lies that he had been spreading until then, or that his company had been spreading. And what is really, I think, very crucial, for example, what people would do, especially in the protests of 96 and 97, the student protests of 96 and 97 in Serbia, is that they would go out to quote-unquote silence the daily news of RTS in the evening, during the time of the evening bulletin. So for the half hour when the news would be reported, people would go out with like pots and pans, literally on their streets, on the terraces, out of their windows, and they would just literally bang these pots and pans, or they would go with whistles, and they would make a noise for the half an hour that the bulletin lasts, because of the fact that they were like, we don't want to hear it because it is literally just noise because of the obvious lies that were being spread. So I think that is a really good, I think that really shows you the extent to which RTS went actually with their inaccuracies in reporting.
Yeah, it's crazy now. Like, this is the first time I'm actually like recapping everything about like media, also from the 90s, and just like seeing how it's the same, and the people have been fighting against it, and still it stays the same. People wanted to remove the editor, and it's still the same. It's well, I hope something happens now. I hope like this changes things, such as like, I think the students plan to do this well, such as like changing the country. Like, you don't get just like the president out, or like his like ministers out. Like, you have to change it from inside out. You have to go to the villages and speak to the people. You have to really like change something like that. And I think the same thing is with RTS. Like, I don't know how, but it has to be changed like from the roots. It's something that has been a problem, and that like corruption.
Yeah, and in theory that would be done by REM, right? That brings us back to the beginning. That is what REM does. That is what they are at least supposed to do. Yeah. Because even if you change the editor and you still have all of these journalists, and if they are still doing inaccurate reporting, then someone has to come and say, look, we're gonna stop your broadcasting if you don't do your job properly. And if you don't know how to do your job, here's a list of things that you have to stick to. This is a code of conduct of journalism. You need to stick to this. And every time you transgress it, every time you cross this boundary, we're going to come and we're going to remind you that you're not allowed to report in this way. So there have to be consequences, but the problem is that these consequences don't exist. And they don't exist because the REM doesn't exist. I mean, it exists, but even before, when it had a council, it was doing nothing. I mean, people were having protests even before, in front of REM, even before the student protests and blockades started, but they sadly, usually it led nowhere. But now it finally seems to be leading somewhere, because now this is really when the whole country almost is united, or at least many of the people are united in this fight. Yeah, in the country and outside of the country, because also like people from diaspora are also supporting that. Let's just like finish it with, do you know exactly, did the students say like exactly when are they going to blockade, like unblock the building? Like, what do they have to do actually to unblock the building? Laura probably knows that.
Every day there is like a plan for the protest, and it's like, so this happens like we're dying the Easter eggs at 3, then we're gonna have like a party at 5, then DJ comes at 9, other DJ at 10. When does this end? When the new council is elected, and when they do what they're supposed to do in theory. So that is when this all ends. Yeah. Very, very simple, as very all of the other demands.
Really simple. A very simple, yeah, exactly. Like all the other demands, so simple. Yeah.
Just like all the demands, like it's like you hear like students have all these demands, like they have like 6 demands and this demand for the RTS, and you hear like all these demands, but then you look at them and you're like, isn't that what's supposed to already be there? Yeah. So it's really beautiful that they're composing all of that.
Yeah, you can even, I'm just gonna add the little bit, like you can even see the propaganda of RTS like with the demands, because we have seen our president on TV. I think I've seen the president more times than I've seen my own father, I think. Yes. And this is, I just want to mention this to the listeners very quickly, and then, you know, I don't want to also hold Laura back, but I mean, the thing is, the president in Serbia is almost like has a similar function as, like, I don't know, the Queen of England or the King of England, you know, like they of the UK. Yeah. Like the main person, the main big boss, quote unquote, of our country should be the prime minister. Yeah. But our president is a very interesting character who has decided to cede all power. So now basically everything that is happening is something that he has a say in. And the funny thing is, he keeps getting invited or arranging for, I don't know, these to show up and do these appearances on TV, on RTS, on Pink, on Happy, on all of these regime-controlled media broadcasters, you know. And he goes there to talk about everything and anything happening in the country, whether it be environmental problems or problems with transportation or problems with the finances or the budgeting or the culture. He's there to talk about it, even though he has no precedence over any of that. And one of the things he also likes to talk about is the student demands. And he keeps going on TV and talking about how all the demands are met, you know, and he's met all the demands, and now he's actually even sad that he's met the demands, and he keeps playing all of these different weird figures and doing all of these extreme mental gymnastics when he's on TV, which is pretty impressive to see, honestly, like the extent to which it goes. But the funny thing is, he keeps talking about this, like, I've met their demands, I've met the demands, they are just now protesting because they want a colored revolution. But the truth is, first of all, the demands have not been met still. Second of all, he is not the one that needs to meet these demands. He is not the one who is the authority which we are asking. He's not the institution which needs to respond to these demands, any of the demands. So same as with the one with RTS. I'm sure he's been showing up. I don't know, I try to avoid him as much as I can. I'm sure he's been showing up to the media outlets and saying about how this demand has been met, how he always has some form of say in anything happening in the country. And I'm sure he's going to say how this demand has been met as well. And again, it is not his authority to deal with any of these demands. That's not his job.
But he's always going to make everything his job. And he
Absolutely.
even uses the language that he uses is when he talks about like the shopping mall, and he's like, I made this shopping mall for you. Yeah, exactly. I think next time you should definitely have like a communications major just to talk about the language that is used by our president and by the state-controlled media, because it is truly impressive. How they talk to also like their supporters. Their supporters, their co-workers, and everything like that's really unhumane.
It's impressive.
Thank you so much, Milica. This was really insightful.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Then that's it for this episode, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.